What the passage portrays, and it's very difficult for many people to absorb this, it portrays fallen angels. These are not the good guys. Remember when Satan fell, a third of the angels fell with him. Not all of them, but a group of them, apparently, and we'll talk more about this in a minute, chose to try to create a hybrid race by I don't know the technology. I'm not going to get into that. But they apparently were... See, angels can't multiply. Angels are eternal. Reproduction is a process for mortals. But at the same time, Satan's got a problem. A third of the angels fell with him, so he's got a deficiency of 2 to 1 in any war that comes, right? He's got to find a way to strengthen himself. This is just a conjecture that floats around. Now, the offspring of Nephilim, they're also called the Hagibarim, the mighty ones. And now, where the confusion starts to set in is when this Hebrew passage was translated into the Greek in the Septuagint, the word they used for the Nephilim was gigantes. It sounds like giants, and it turns out they were giants, but that's not what the word means. Gigantes comes from gigas, which means earthborn. So in the Hebrew, they're called the fallen ones. In the Greek, they're called the earthborn. The purpose of the flood was not just that there was sin in the land. There was, that's emphasized. But if sin brings the flood, we better get some life jackets. No, there's something far deeper going on. That's what I want to sensitize you for when you do your own study and come to your own conclusions. But I want you to recognize there's something much more profound that's a problem that God was solving, and that is that Satan's strategy was to contaminate the human race.
Now that we know who these sons of God were, let's make the connection with the ancient mystery teachings. In order to do this, we must turn to a book which is referenced in the New Testament by Jesus, Peter, Paul, and Jude, but are not in the current Bible as we have today. It is also a book that the early church fathers considered inspired, and certainly the audience of the early Israelites were well versed in and familiar with. I am speaking about the book of Énok. I believe it is important to look at a book like Énok and enhance our understanding of the Bible. I am not ready to say that it is inspired canon, but if it is referenced by so many in the New Testament, I believe it is worth investigating. The modern-day Christian scholars have largely put the Book of Énok aside. As such, the book has been used by people who promote the ancient alien idea and folks like Zecharia Sitchin to present their theories of Nibiru and the Anunnaki. But in fact, the biblical foundation is the best fit for the Book of Énok. According to the Book of Énok, this is the origin of the mystery schools. The fallen angels taught mankind weapon making and warfare, applying makeup and jewelry, introduced mankind to psychedelic drugs, vampirism, enchantments and cursings, as well as astrology. It is quite remarkable to see how much of what these watchers taught not only relate to the ancient mystery religions, but are common everyday things of the world we live in today. We even see the watchers teach mankind the art of abortion. Quote, "The fifth was Kasdea. This is he who showed the Yaladim A'am all the evil strikings of unclean Rakim and demonic entities. He showed them the dashing of the embryo in the womb so that it would die." End quote. The Book of Énok also states that the Watchers began to mix animals and humans together. Quote, "They started to sin against birds, beasts, reptiles, fish, and then to devour one another's bodies, even drinking the blood. It was then the earth laid accusation against these lawless ones." End quote. The Book of Jasher, another ancient text referenced several times in the Bible, which also records the nefarious acts of the fallen angels, confirms, quote, "Then the sons of men began teaching the mixture of animals of one species with the other, in order therewith to provoke the Lord." End quote. This is extremely interesting because it is information which would have sounded absurd until the last half century. It is not talking about hybridization, but of creating creatures that go beyond their own kind as God created man, animals, and plants. This tells us a couple of things. One, that the technology they had was far greater than we can ever imagine. This is confirmed in the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible, where it states, quote, What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun." End quote. No matter how far we think we've come in the name of science and technology, it seems we are only catching up to what we were taught by these fallen angels in the antediluvian or pre-flood world. 2. The creatures we see in several ancient mythologies such as centaurs and minotaurs could all be attributed from what these fallen angels did on the earth. Steve Quayle, in his book Genesis 6 Giants, summarizes this idea, stating, quote, "The collective memories in the form of myths, fables, and fairy tales from various cultures and ages of mankind are overwhelming evidence that the Nephilim existed." End quote. I believe that the antediluvian world of fallen angels, hybrids, warfare, Nephilim, astrology, advanced technology, and false spirituality is Atlantis. As theosophists and esoteric authors of the last century wrote how they believe the mystery schools began in Atlantis, I believe that the antediluvian world and the teachings of these fallen angels are the same thing. This makes sense to what the elite and secret societies are trying to do to forge a new world order today. Not only are they trying to rediscover Atlantis, but in doing so, they are merely attempting to fulfill the ancient hope which has been at work since the days of Adam and Eve, the earthly rule of the Antichrist. The truth certainly seems stranger than fiction.
Even jaded New Yorkers scratching their heads. A mysterious, silver, shiny object, or objects, it seems, floating in the sky yesterday. You can see all people have stopped in the street there in their tracks looking at it. Some folks say they saw lights. Others were maybe waiting for little green men to arrive.
It says Centerville, a buzz tonight, a bright blue light spotted moving in the sky. And here's what you captured, this bright, fiery light moving across the sky.
Sea surveyors say they found what can only be described as the wreckage of a crashed spaceship.
That's getting real bright.
Stacey Gibson can't tell you what she captured on home video, but she can tell you she's never seen anything like it.
You got to see it for yourself. The residents saw the lights hovering in the sky about Monday night.
A North Canton couple is trying to figure out what it was that they saw in the sky over their home just a few days ago. Mysterious, unexplained, orange-colored objects.
And they tell us that they saw lights, but those lights were not from an airplane or a helicopter, and these lights dropped something as they hung low over the sky. Mike was in the Air Force and says the lights hovering in the sky were unlike any he had seen.
Um objeto luminoso foi visto no céu pelos moradores e, espantados, ligaram para a polícia.
Fíjate las esferas que lograron verse en el centro de Lima, en lugares como el de la Avenida España.
Maybe it's a comet. Could be. It could be. Maybe these are our last moments. It could be.
Here comes another one.
What? What?
I don't know if I'm getting it or not.
Oh, the top is even metallic.
I see that view every single night, and I've never seen anything in the sky at that same location or at the same height. I've never seen those sort of lights up in the sky.
One of the main topics of interest the New Age movement has harnessed through the infiltrating of the truth movement has been on the topic of UFOs and ETs. Many of these folks, like David Wilcock, David Icke, Jordan Maxwell, and many others, have in fact verified the concept that the UFO phenomenon is not necessarily flesh and blood beings, but are a race of highly evolved spiritual entities who have attained what we refer to as godhood and power over the elements of nature and physics of which we are currently limited to. This is eerily similar to the sacred promise given to the inner members of the New World Order. It is also the same concept being promoted by transhumanists and the road to attain singularity and human immortality through the use of technology in the field of biology and genetics. I believe that all of these various tentacles are leading to the same place and the same goal. More people today believe that there is life outside of Earth than ever before. A 2008 Scripps UFO poll conducted by Thomas Hargrove and Guido H. Stample showed that over 74% of 18 to 24-year-olds believed it was likely that intelligent life exists on other planets. This is perhaps due to several factors, including our current growth in scientific knowledge and understanding of the size and vastness of the universe, but also the propaganda perpetuated by our media. Science fiction has exploded in America and the world as a staple theme for films, movies, books, and video games. Could this all be part of the plan to prepare the world for disclosure?
I think the New Age, as well as the mainstream sort of media, and I mean like movies and television shows, and everybody's been shoving this alien UFO thing down our throats because it has so many uses for the Antichrist system. I've said many times, I don't know if this is the way that it will all be set up. It is just a really convenient way if it does go down like this, because it does do three main things that are needed for the Antichrist system. Number one, it causes the world to reject God. We've been sold this erroneous idea that if aliens exist, then God doesn't. So the headlines the day after would read, you know, God proven wrong or whatever. The whole world would be united in its rejection of God overnight. So that certainly would play in, obviously, to the biblical account of this world order at the end of time. Also, we would believe ourselves to be God. This one would take a little bit longer to sink in, but the idea that aliens, in a real sort of evolution kind of way, just evolved, and that it could be sold to us that they were somehow our creators in the sense that they genetically modified us, or they might have some excuse to the origin of life or something to that effect. Ultimately, we would see them as gods in the sense of their perhaps abilities or their technological advancement, and it really depends on this point of how and what they say about us, if they say anything, or if in the discovering of them that it is implied in some way that we ourselves could be like them and therefore like gods. And that really goes into the third part, which is the evolution. I think that this concept of evolution is crucial to so much of what the Antichrist system does, especially the genocide based on belief system that happens in the end time scenario, really requires, as it did in the Third Reich, an idea of evolution. There's a concept that there's certain people that are not fit for the new system, the new evolution. They were sort of helping humanity evolve by the elimination of those that weren't ready for the new age, the new world. Hitler believed in the fifth root race of Blavatsky, but yet I think this new system is going to have a very unique version of evolution. And of course, the appearance of aliens really validates that on a worldwide scale. No longer do you have to, have this sort of underground preaching of theosophy as it was in Hitler's time, but rather the whole world is united in this understanding or perceived understanding of potential evolution coming. After all, the aliens are here. We can be like them. They just simply evolved like we have the potential to do. We can become like them. We can communicate telepathically or whatever, as long as we are willing to take that next step. And there's this great precipice that we're, now at this ability to move to this next level, but it's all going to be in the context of, God has just recently been disproven, but yet there will be people on earth that can't quite go with the new system because they're stuck in the old paradigm of God does exist and the Bible was accurate and these aliens are a deception. Those people will be presented as enemy number one and will be viewed as the thing that's holding us back from the potential evolution. You'll find that as many people that say that Jesus wasn't really, who he said he wasn't all this stuff, it's predicated on the idea that the Bible isn't an accurate description of what really happened. That always has to go in tandem with that, because anybody that's read the Bible and understands the Bible can make clear cases that Jesus did, in fact, know exactly what he was doing and exactly what he was saying. That's why the Muslims have to say that the Bible is corrupted. And so the first thing I would ask people is, what do you know? What proof do you have that the Bible was corrupted? Because as I've said before, it would be so easy to prove if it was, because there are more copies for the Bible, the New Testament, than there are for any ancient text in the history of the world. Bar none. And they are extremely scrutinized by people that both hate the Bible and people that love the Bible. So if the Bible had been changed, all the Muslim or anybody else would have to do is to say, here's where the Bible said one thing, and then here are these other ones say a completely different thing. All the ones after this said something different about what Jesus said on a particular issue about his deity or whatever else. But nobody can prove it. And the problem is that it would be so easy to prove, because we have documents going back from the very beginning to now. Jesus never came out and said, hey, guess what, guys, I'm God. But he didn't do it for a specific reason. Now, he did actually end up doing that, and that's why they killed him for blasphemy. You have to realize that that's why they wanted to kill him. A lot of times in the Bible when it says, and after that the Pharisees seek to kill him, if you read what that was, it was because they realized what he was saying. They would say things like, when he said he could forgive sins, they would say, this is blasphemy. Who can forgive sins but God alone? And I got to agree with the Pharisees on that. That's absolutely true. If I came to your house and I said, hey, you know what? I just showed up. My name's Chris. I just wanted to let you guys know that I forgive you for that fight you had this morning, or whatever. I forgive you for being mean to your cousin or your brother. And you would look at me and be like, who are you and what does this concern you? You're acting as if my shortcomings are somehow affecting you. That's crazy. You can't forgive me of my sins. And so that is a big part of that. And he said that quite often. He said that in many different contexts. And the Pharisees do say to us, who can do that but God alone? And so they would seek to kill him and things like that. They would also seek to kill him because he said that he was the Son of God. There's actually places where they said, okay, you're saying that that's your Father and that you're the Son of God. How is that not blasphemy, they would say. You're making yourself equal with God. And this is a really well understood concept in Hebrew. If you call yourself the son of something, you are the embodiment of that thing. Begat of something, if you are begotten of something, you are that thing. For instance, a cat begats another cat. If I have a child, that child is just as much a human as I am. We're equally the same amounts of human. And so for that reason, if God begots a son, it's just as much God. It's not any less than God. So that was a massive claim to say that, especially in the context in which he said it. He claimed to be before time. the Son of God. He was the creator of the world. Before Abraham was, I am. His many I am statements are another unbelievably blasphemous thing to say. He was claiming by proxy, and the Pharisees, trust me, were well aware what he was saying. He was claiming to be the voice of the burning bush. Another thing, if you understand Daniel 7, he was claiming to be the cloud rider of Daniel 7. They knew that, and I believe it's John 8, they knew exactly what he was saying, and it messed with their heads. So there's many different things like that. Another big one is that he allowed himself to be worshipped on several occasions. There is several occasions where the apostles would refuse to be worshipped. Angels on several occasions said, hey, don't worship me, I'm just a messenger of God. But Jesus on a number of occasions allowed people to worship him. That is either a completely blasphemous act, or he was doing what everybody knew that he was doing. He was claiming to be God every day of his life, everywhere that he went, and the Pharisees knew it. That's one of the reasons they felt justified in killing him. So if you're reading the Bible and you're reading this the whole time. He claimed that he was going to come at the end of time and judge the world. Who can judge but God alone? Who is worthy to judge but God alone? The issue there really culminates in the cross, and what happened in the cross was an act that would only make sense if God himself was on the cross. The very fact that he knew what he was doing, the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world, and that whole concept of the gospel really makes sense in that context. So when people say that Jesus wasn't claiming to be God, they have to say that the Bible is inaccurate and all those things are not true, because Jesus claimed to be God all the time.
Are there UFOs and ETs in the Bible? Interesting question. We got to define our terms a little bit, I think, right? So, in as far as there were sons of God coming down, there were demons coming down, then yes, there are aliens, because the demons of yesterday are today's aliens. That's really the bottom line. There are not aliens from some distant galaxy or from the Pleiades system or anything like that. They are very much from here. They're demonic, and so in as far as there were demons, then yes. But, you know, we can't call them demons or gods from yesteryear, because that's really out of fashion. Right. But you can call them aliens, because now they're from some other place and they evolved. It's interesting how evolution has served as such a foundation for this. Mm-hmm. You know, God, I mean, the demons, Satan gets us thinking that there is no God, that there is no Satan or any demons. But then he starts replacing it with these other entities, and we believe in evolution, you know, lots of people do, and so that serves as the foundation for these other worldly beings that have also evolved, not by God, mind you, but they're you know, they've evolved from a long time ago. And as far as UFOs, well, UFO is an unidentified flying object, and we're seeing those today. People are seeing those all over the place. And generally what they look like is just some kind of a white light. It's a white ball of light or something like this that's floating around in the sky, and people will say, oh, it's a kite. Now we can all see what a kite looks like. They're not helicopters. We know what helicopters look like. We're not stupid, right? Neither are the people that take all these videos, and you can watch them on YouTube, and there's just thousands of them. And you know, I'm sure there's a few pranksters out there, right? But sure, but still, just the quantity and even the quality of the video is such that you're like, wow, that's really amazing. So in the Old Testament, you find places where the heavens were opened. For example, in 2 Kings chapter 6, Elijah and his servant are surrounded by the Syrians. They wake up one morning and the servant goes outside and he sees all these guys. He's like, oh boy. He goes back in and says, Master, we're done. And Elijah, you know, he's just very calm, and he prays, oh Lord, I pray you'd open his eyes. And so God opens the young man's eyes, and he looks all around him and he sees these horses and chariots of fire. Now that's interesting. Why would God need to use chariots of fire? Well, I don't know the answer. I mean, you'd think you could just go, you know, kind of Star Trek kind of thing. You go from here to there. But for some reason, in that other dimension, you have horses of fire, you got these chariots of fire, and these things are going around. And in some way, I would suspect that the demons are kind of doing the same thing. I don't know if they're on horses of fire necessarily, but when they materialize, they look like these fiery white orbs. And however they're transporting themselves, I don't know. But it's not like they can just think it and they're there, but they have to somewhat travel, they have to traverse through whatever medium, the spiritual medium or through the physical medium. They're actually moving about. So, again, I wouldn't say that we have, what we call technical UFOs back then, but you did have these horses and chariots of fire in that angelic, spiritual realm. There's movement going on. Angels have wings. Again, why would they have wings? Right? Is there air in that? These are questions we just don't know.
Right.
We just don't know the answer to these things. But still, there's a function for these things. If they have wings, then they must need them. If there are horses and chariots of fire, then they must need those in some capacity that I don't understand. And we're not really told. But still, there it is. So, what we're seeing today is a resurgence. We're not so much a resurgence, we're seeing a breakthrough of that realm into our own. And those demons are coming through. Somehow they're being able to manifest in this realm. I don't know how they do that, but they're doing it. They're manifesting, and they're up in the skies. Millions of people have seen these things.
Right.
You even have sort of more famous people like Ronald Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
He claimed to have seen something a number of times. Jimmy Carter, Barry Goldwater, Douglas MacArthur. All right, just to name a few of the presidents. You have other world leaders. You have Michio Kaku, who's a real famous physicist.
Let me make a prediction, and that is sometime by mid-century, we might make contact with an intelligent civilization in outer space.
Plus you have, just lots and lots of astronauts. They say that every time that we had a mission, we were being followed by something. We were being watched. We saw some craft. We saw something. Right? And you can watch some of these videos that have been released by NASA, and you can see these things out there, right? So there's definitely something out there. The question is, what is it?
Scholars with no religious affiliation who have looked into this topic of UFOs and ETs for several decades have come to very interesting conclusions. Jack Vallée, a venture capitalist, computer scientist, author, ufologist, and former astronomer who helped build the precursor to what we know as the Internet, has studied the UFO phenomenon for over 3 decades. After looking into the relationship between UFOs, cults, religious movements, demons, angels, ghosts, and psychic phenomenon, Vallée changed his proposed hypothesis from the UFO phenomenon being an extraterrestrial origin, in other words, craft and beings from another planet or a faraway galaxy, to a multi-dimensional visitation hypothesis, or interdimensional. In his book, Messengers of Deception, Vallée states, quote, "Human beings are under the control of a strange force that bends them in absurd ways, forcing them to play a role in a bizarre game of deception." End quote. Later in the same book, he states, quote, "The UFO phenomenon represents a manifestation of a reality that transcends our current understanding of physics. The UFOs are physical manifestations that cannot be understood apart from their psychic and symbolic reality. What we see in effect here is not an alien invasion, it is a control system which acts on humans and uses humans." End quote. J. Allen Hynek, a U.S. astronomer, professor, and ufologist, best remembered for his contributions in the field of UFOs and acting as scientific advisor to UFO studies taken by the U.S. Air Force, again came to same conclusions of the UFOs and alleged extraterrestrial phenomenon. In his book, Edge of Reality, he states, quote, "If UFOs are somebody else's nuts and bolts hardware, then we must still explain how such tangible hardware can change shape before our eyes, vanish in a Cheshire cat manner, not even leaving a grin, seemingly melt away in front of us, or apparently materialize mysteriously before us without apparent detection by persons nearby or in neighboring towns. We must wonder too where UFOs are hiding when not manifesting themselves to human eyes." End quote. The overall consensus seems to be that these crafts which are being seen have the ability to manifest as physical objects and at the same time manipulate time and space as to become invisible or perform aerial maneuvers that defy our current understanding of physics and nature. The deeper side to this phenomenon are the abduction accounts recorded by millions of people all over the world, regardless of time, race, culture, and upbringing. Dr. John Mack, professor at Harvard Medical School, a psychiatrist and writer, also looked into the UFO and abduction phenomenon for several decades and came to similar conclusions as Vallée and Hynek. Although he recently passed away, his contributions to the study of ufology and alien abductions is highly touted and greatly respected. He states in an interview with Nova Online when asked if the phenomenon is literally physical or psychological, stating, quote, "Yes, it's both. It's both literally physically happening to a degree, and it's also some kind of psychological, spiritual experience occurring and originating perhaps in another dimension. And so the phenomenon stretches us, or it asks us to stretch to open to realities that are not simply the literal physical world, but to extend to a possibility that there is other unseen realities from which our consciousness, our, if you will, learning processes over the past several hundred years have closed us off." End quote.
What seems to be the case is they come from some other domain, some place, maybe not another star or maybe from another dimension, but they manifest, they show up here in our physical world. People have a number of cases where people are just playing gone, a child comes into the mother's room, "Mom, you weren't there during the night when I came." There is burned earth outside where the ships have landed. There is physical, it may not satisfy our criteria of proof, but proof may be something which only operates within the frame of evidence of this physical world in the box you mentioned before that we live in. This is what's going on here is something in some ways more subtle. In other words, something coming from another dimension into our world, which is very commonly experienced in other cultures, but not in this culture.
John Mack, who recently passed away, but he was at Harvard, and according to his own testimony, he says, I was not a believer in this thing. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He just kept hearing about these things. So he came to this conclusion that these were real physical abductions. Very, very slowly he came to that conclusion. And rather skeptically. He didn't want to come to that conclusion. But eventually the data was so much that he could not overcome it. And he had to just say, well, it's happening. Something physical is happening. Dr. David Jacobs has done similar research. He was quite upbeat about this whole thing for a long time, but in the last several years he's become very downcast about his discoveries, because he's discovering that these beings that are taking people are smarter than us, they're stronger than us, and they have a hybridization program going on. That they're creating a hybrid race to take over, and he says at best we're going to be second-class serfs. So he's very discouraged, and I can see why. I think if you discover these things, and yet you don't understand that there's a greater power, which is Jesus Christ, who has a much better plan, then I would be extremely depressed. And in a way I'm sort of upbeat about the whole thing, because I see that we are getting very close to the end. But it's also kind of scary. There's crazy things going on.
Dr. David Jacob, an associate professor of history at Temple University, specializing in 20th century American history and culture, has also studied the UFO and abduction phenomenon for over 40 years. In an interview with L.A. Marzulli in the book Alien Interviews, Jacobs comments on the alien abduction phenomenon, stating, quote, "This is a phenomenon that is either psychological or it is happening. There is very little in the middle. I have learned that the abduction phenomenon is vast, global, and it occurs with great frequency." End quote. Whitley Strieber, in his classic account of an alien encounter in the book Communion, records his experience with these entities, stating, quote, "I became entirely given over to extreme dread. The fear was so powerful that it seemed to make my personality become evaporate. Whitley ceased to exist. What was left was a body in a state of raw fear so great that it swept about me like a thick, suffocating curtain, turning paralysis into a condition that seemed close to death. I died and a wild animal appeared in my place." End quote. Then, in a later release in a book entitled Transformation, The Breakthrough, he dives deeper into the experience, stating, quote, "Increasingly, I felt as if I were entering a struggle that might even be more than life and death. It might be a struggle for my soul, my essence, or whatever part of me might have reference to the eternal. There are worse things than death, I suspected. So far, the word demon has never been spoken among the scientists and doctors who are working with me. Alone at night, I worried about the legendary cunning of demons. At the very least, I was going stark, raving mad." End quote. Then later in the same book, he states, quote, "I felt an absolutely indescribable sense of menace. It was hell on earth to be there in the presence of these entities. And yet I couldn't move, couldn't cry out, couldn't get away. I lay as still as death, suffering inner agonies. Whatever was there seemed so monstrously ugly, so filthy and dark and sinister. Of course they were demons. They had to be, and they were here and I couldn't get away." End quote. According to many researchers in the field, and even the people who have directly experienced this phenomenon for themselves, all seem to agree that there is a spiritual element driving this phenomenon. It is clear that there is a metaphysical nature to the UFOs and the alien abductions themselves. Furthermore, the startling similarities with the phenomenon with the occult and other historical, mythological accounts of direct contact with demonic entities should be alarming. Jack Valet alludes to this concept, stating, quote, "The symbolic display seen by the abductees is identical to the type of initiation ritual or astral voyage that is embedded in the occult traditions of every culture. The structure of abduction stories is identical to that of occult initiation rituals. The UFO beings of today belong to the same class of manifestation as the occult entities that were described in centuries past." End quote. There is another angle to this phenomenon that is seldom discussed, but is very important to point out. That is the solution to help stop those who experience the alien abduction phenomenon. Joe Jordan, state-sanctioned director and field investigator for MUFON, through his investigation at CE4 Research Group, has discovered that calling upon the name of Jesus Christ during the abduction can make the experience stop instantly. On their website, ce4research.com, the mission statement states, quote, "The mission of CE4 Research Group is to share with the world the most powerful evidence known that exposes the alien entities for who they really are. The evidence is in the testimony of those who have overcome the experience, the oppression, the bondage, the harassment, the control, the lies, the deception that these entities perpetuate by calling out in the name and authority of Jesus Christ. Through this evidence of these testimonies, we will be able to help others. The world asks for this evidence, and we will give it to them." End quote.
Alien abduction. This is taken from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. The terms alien abduction or the abduction phenomenon describe subjectively real memories of being taken secretly and or against one's will by apparently non-human entities and subjected to complex physical and psychological procedures. There's been a lot of movies that have come out over the past few months that have really been pushing this whole idea of UFOs and alien abductions. Most recent one from this past weekend, The Fourth Kind. Any of you guys had a chance to see it? A little disturbing, isn't it? Another one is the series V. This V series was a TV show that was run probably 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. They've brought it back. And if you've had a chance to see the first couple of shows, you'll see it's really stepping out there compared to the first series. This is also taken from V. This is what they offer on V, the entities that are on the show. Technology that will help enrich your lives in all areas. This is what these beings have been offering on the show. Another one was District 9. That one came out prior to these last two that have just come out. District 9, that was quite bizarre in itself. First topic we'd like to get into tonight is looking at what the other professional, secular researchers in this field have to say about this experience, so that you're not seeing this as something that it's just us saying up here tonight. We want you to see what these other professional researchers are saying, like John Carpenter himself. There's a number of top researchers out there that are looking at this phenomenon and have been for years. And we've been looking at it along with them. Also, another thing we'd like to look at is there communication coming from these entities to these people? There seems to be. And we'd like to take a look at what those messages are coming. And I'd like to bring up Guy Malone from Roswell, New Mexico. He's going to cover those topics.
So while this Heaven's Gate group, they wouldn't seem like most of us to be the most credible account of alien communication with humans. It's just what got me originally started researching this and taking it seriously. What I've found in the recent years since then, especially since moving to Roswell, is that there is indeed much credible documentation from sources that might genuinely surprise you on this phenomena of alleged aliens, anyways, communicating with humans. And that's what I'm going to be sharing with you just in brief tonight, an overview of the spiritual messages of extraterrestrials. The last full lecture I gave in Roswell during our annual festival this summer was a full 1-hour presentation on the documented messages that people claim the ETs have brought them. And if that statement raises some skepticism with you, well, I'm glad if it does, because it should. It seems to reason, to me anyway, that if in fact aliens do exist, and if they are in fact traveling here to Earth, and if they don't have hostile intent, but they're here to help us or be our buddies, and if they are in fact communicating with humans, that's a lot, I realize, but if all that's true, it seems to me that their messages would reasonably just be largely about science and physics, or the nature of matter, the universe, all the technology that they've discovered over their thousands of years of enjoying superior technology to us. But you'd think if they were actually going to speak to us, that they'd talk largely about the how-tos of star travel, how they got here, or how we could get there maybe. But it's going to really surprise you to find out here in a sec that in all the many books written by alien contactees and professional researchers of the phenomena, that the very large majority of these documented messages by these visitors or abductors, if you like, it's almost exclusively about spirituality and the end times, to use the biblical parlance, or the coming earth changes, if you've got a more New Age cosmology. The aliens also have a lot to say about their involvement with humanity now and leading up to this period, the end times, and even how they can save us from the end times if you align yourselves with them. So for credibility's sake, I'm going to share with you in advance the sources that I'm going to be drawing from just for the short presentation. That's my book cover. One researcher I'm quoting is Pulitzer Prize-winning author Dr. John Mack, who up until his death served as the head of the psychiatry department at the Harvard University School of Medicine. The book Abduction is his decade-long study of over 200 men and women who claimed alien abduction. And in 1992, Dr. Mack co-chaired a 4-day conference held at MIT where many mental health professionals attempted to determine if the alien abduction reports could be traced to a psychological malady. This here is the book that resulted from that conference. Alien Discussions, Proceedings of the Abduction Study Conference held at MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts. You can see it's quite huge. It's chock full of abductee stories and psychological papers presented by the invited professionals. This is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It's taken this topic seriously enough to host a conference by top psychological professionals on the field. And it turns out that the group determined that the alien abduction reports could not be blamed on mental health issues. They wanted to see if it was a sickness and if they could cure it. There's nothing they could find in the entire field of psychology ever documented that would explain what these people is reporting that was a sickness that they could cure or help with. But another well-known researcher in the field is Dr. Carla Turner, PhD. She's also now deceased, and she was herself an abductee, and she also interviewed and counseled many others in the field. Her books are Taken, Into the Fringe, and Masquerade of Angels. They largely contain interviews with other alien abductees, and she lectured very widely at Mutual UFO Network events and other UFO conferences. You could say that she did not have the warm, fuzzy, new agey, feel-good view of the alien abduction phenomena, but she considered it an invasion and a violation, similar to Dr. David Jacobs, PhD, who's currently the Associate Professor of History at Temple University. And Dr. Jacobs actually obtained his PhD in 1973 based on his research on the UFO phenomena. He's author of The Threat, Revealing the Secret of the Alien Agenda. And he's written many books while studying UFOs and abduction reports for over 40 years. And while I think many of you are going to find it at first hard to believe that there's actually that much information out there on extraterrestrial encounters with humans, I'm going to give you a few quotes also from, believe it or not, the Encyclopedia of Extraterrestrial Encounters, compiled by Dr. Ron D. Story. I mean, who knew there'd be enough of this going on for there actually to be an actual encyclopedia? I got it with me here too also. It's also quite large. It's a great resource. It's full of papers and summaries from dozens of the world's leading experts on UFO and abduction encounters. But it used to be, I know, especially decades ago, that people relegated these tales of alien visits to the campy B-movie stuff of the 1950s. But I'm going to say it's probably since Steven Spielberg's movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind that I think many people have begun to take the topic with a little more seriousness, if even only privately. You don't talk about it at work that often. But the polls that have been done today since the 90s, one was mentioned on that video Joe showed, by the Roper organization, Gallup, CNN, USA Today, have all consistently revealed that perhaps 2% of the United States has had experiences like in the movie Close Encounters. So if you know 50 people in your family, your friends, who you work with, chances are that at least one of those people that you know has had encounters of this nature that they remember. Just given that we're all here at an alien abduction conference discussing this stuff, that percentage is definitely going to be much higher, I'm sure. And I know of the few of the people in the room as well, and I count myself among that number, by the way. But the debut of that movie this weekend, The Fourth Kind, it's just more evidence that many people are believing in alien abduction. And that movie, I think, is very likely going to push a lot of skeptics toward belief in alien abduction. It's very intense, as a couple of you have already seen it. It's quite disturbing. I honestly can't even recommend that you go see it, in fact, especially if you're dealing with or struggling with this issue. And I especially wouldn't recommend that anyone ever take children to see the movie. But I gave you these sources up front, just first to hopefully make a brief case that there's really quite a bit of credible material worthy of giving some bit of consideration on our part, just to draw from. So the first actual quote I'm going to share to set up the next few minutes is not from an extraterrestrial, not from an alien abductee either. It's from a very famous scientist whom I think we've all heard of, Dr. Carl Sagan. I'll be quoting him from the book authored by Raymond Fowler, but in the annals of abduction reports and contactee cases that have been authored since the 60s, these are the three cases that I think would be considered most famous and most recognizable. Yeah, I see a few heads nodding already. Okay, if you ever looked into the abduction stuff for even 5 minutes, I won't go into detail, but the most well-documented and pretty well-scrutinized cases of alien abduction and visitations happened in the lives of Betty and Barney Hill, Whitley Strieber, I always mess that up, and Betty Andreasen. And the book I'm going to be quoting from is about the third there, Betty Andreasen. The book is by Raymond Fowler, who was her therapist while she was remembering, and with him documenting the many visitations she experienced over the years. The book I'm quoting from is The Andreasen Affair. Dr. Carl Sagan, our nation's leading authority on the question of extraterrestrial life, sought to find a rationale for the reason that might lie behind such visitations in his excellent book, Intelligent Life in the Universe. After critically analyzing a number of possible motives, he stated quite bluntly, one of the primary motivations for the exploration of the New World was to convert the inhabitants to Christianity. Can we exclude the possibility of an extraterrestrial evangelism? Dr. Sagan here, I think he raises a very astute question. And the more that researchers and authors out there study the reports of alien abductions and encounters, this question and the argument for an affirmative answer to the question comes up more and more. Are extraterrestrials intentionally evangelizing us to an alternative spirituality? I'm going to finish this presentation for you with some direct quotes from Betty Andreasson later, describing what happened to her when the entities first came to her. But just over this next 10 minutes, that's all I'm going to take now. I'm going to list some of the alien quotes and expert opinions on their messages and ask you to draw your own conclusions. And perhaps I want you to try to answer Dr. Sagan's question for yourself. And the arguably very credible sources that I've already disclosed to you is all I'm going to use. And they'll give you an overview of what contactees and abductees report they've been told during the encounters, sometimes in broad daylight, sometimes on what seemed like spaceships or in their own bedrooms. The experiences differ in many ways, and many have a hard time pinning them down in space and time when they're describing them. They describe the experiences having an other dimensional or astral or dreamlike quality to them, and it sometimes takes years to even remember the events I'm going to share with you in detail. And my wife's paper on this topic compares the abduction experiences and the powers of the aliens to biblical visions and experiences in the Bible involving angels. And if you follow that reasoning, combined with the horrific nature of the abduction reports, it raises the question easily of whether some of these people might be dealing with fallen angels. And you can read that paper online on the internet for free as well. So starting with John Mack, finally starting, I say, of Harvard University, after interviewing over 200 abductees and hearing their experiences with aliens firsthand, he writes, "The information that abductees receive is concerned primarily with the fate of the Earth in the wake of human destructiveness. Scenes are shown of the planet wasted by nuclear war, and especially of the Earth's environment devastated by pollution and toxic clouds. A number of abductees have been shown apocalyptic images of the Earth itself literally cracked open or broken up, followed by elaborate triage scenes in which some people will die, others will survive in some way on Earth, and still others will be transported to some other place where human life will continue in a new way. Scenes of the Earth devastated by a nuclear holocaust, vast panoramas of lifeless, polluted landscapes and waters, apocalyptic images of giant earthquakes, firestorms, floods, and even fractures of the planet itself are shown by the aliens. These are powerfully disturbing to the abductees," he writes, "who tend to experience them as literally predictive of the future of the planet. Some abductees are given assignments in this future holocaust, feed the survivors, or are told, as in the prophetic books of the Bible, that some will perish while others will be taken to another place to participate in the evolution of life in the universe." It's a very poor interpretation of biblical prophecy on Dr. Mack's part. I'm going to throw in for free, but there's further research by Dr. Carla Turner backs up the idea presented here from Dr. Mack that aliens are allegedly prepping people for the end time scenarios. Here's just a few excerpts from abductees she's worked with and what the aliens told them about their nature and their mission. Pat, the gaze of the gray seemed to penetrate her entire being, and she sensed a familiarity with him. "Do not be afraid," it communicated to Pat. "You are the chosen child. We will not harm you." A taller white came over with a file-type instrument and scraped skin from her inner forearm and the bottoms of her feet, clipped some of her hair, and then peeled away samples of her fingernails. "What do you need all those pieces of me for?" she asked. "We are making a new you," the entity replied. "Are you an angel?" Pat inquired. "Yes," the entity told her, "but not like you have been taught." "Did they tell you what's going to happen?" "Yes, they did. They told me about the bad time on Earth." Carla Turner writes, "This image reinforces Pat's altered understanding of God and a spiritual plan. Overall, her experiences with the alien entities have, to the best of her conscious recollection, felt very positive. With a strong religious faith, she has accepted them as angels. Even so," Pat conceded, "there are things which the beings do that seem wrong to us and seem violent." Polly, "I've been involved with the UFO phenomena apparently all my life, and my children also are or have been involved. My father has had experience. He's very careful who he talks to, as he's still a respected technical person active in a military organization. She explained, it was like I was awakened to a sense of cosmic destiny and to an apocalyptic sort of sense of human destiny, a cosmic mission. I must understand the universe. It became a constant undercurrent of striving which persists even now. Given the reports of other abductees, some of which will be presented later, Dr. Carlos says, it was interesting that she related this job and task on Earth that the aliens are prepping her for to Armageddon. Beth, she could not see what he did, but she felt as if her head was being opened and her brain removed, all without any sensation of pain. When the procedure was finished, the alien stood in front of her, and Beth realized that mentally she was different. Her thoughts and reactions to everything were changed, it seemed, and she was filled with new ideas about God and the unity of all life within that supreme source. Changing sources here to the Encyclopedia of Extraterrestrial Encounters, page 1. Another goal of this alien program is the alteration of human consciousness to change our perceptions of ourselves as a species. However the story emerges, the accounts seem remarkably alike of all alien abduction that's studied. Capture, examination. Number 3 is a conference. A meeting, lecture, or schooling session follows. Tour, otherworldly journey, theophany. The witness meets a divine being or has a religious experience. Return aftermath. In the opinion of the writer, the asinine, bizarre, and crazy aspects of the UFO alien activity can be hypothesized as the ABCs of a cosmic consciousness conditioning program to change humans from planetary persons to cosmic citizens. Same author, more detail. Coming up, some might even say a New Age author, describing that the alien contact involves a, quote, theophany, a religious experience with a divine, at least in his opinion, a divine being that conditions them into becoming something else. His more detailed summary of the experiences are UFO contactees have been chosen. No UFO contact is accidental. More importantly, number 4, UFO experiences include paraphysical, parapsychological, and spiritual manifestations which are designed to influence the worldview of contactees. Contactees are programmed for a variety of future activities. They come away from the experiences having a greater sense of cosmic citizenship with other beings in the universe. Number 10, the personal metamorphosis of UFO contactees is the forerunner of a social transformation in human consciousness designed to lead us all into the new age of true science and spirituality. One more from Carla Turner, then I'm going to wind this down and bring it home. Angie asks, am I part alien? One of the Greys told her that she had been altered a little to fulfill a special purpose. And then she asked, did you create humans too? Angie asked, and he confirmed this. For this brief presentation tonight, I just have to be selective in what I can share, but let me tell you, this account is far from the only claim by extraterrestrials that they created human life on Earth. The lecture I presented in Roswell, E.T.'s Message to Humanity, A False Gospel, details this part of it out much more. I'm asking you, are extraterrestrials, based on what you've heard tonight, intentionally evangelizing us to an alternate spirituality? I think I've made the case that they do indeed have a spiritual agenda, and what I've shared with you is not particularly selective on my part. It's not like I'm trying to give you a skewed or a focused view of just one particular portion of alien messages. What I'm sharing is actually quite representative of the whole of alien research, and I'm very confident that any real professional investigator in this field would back me up on that claim. One more I found interesting right before I close, though. Anne Brooke experienced some strange events for which many long years caused her much distress. She is a bright, attractive, perceptive person. However, she was raised in a family that valued family unity, nationalism, traditional views of common sense, and Christian fundamentalist beliefs. She was unable to talk with her family about her UFO experience, which included out-of-body experience, near-death experience, abduction, bodily and sexual examination, and mental communication with UFO entities? Anbrook described the effects of her UFO experience as follows. After my experience, I knew that I had been privileged with a glimpse at something infinitely wondrous and profound. It's quite sad, but honestly it's typical as well in true Patty Hearst Stockholm Syndrome fashion. This woman who experienced tortures, including sexual manipulation, winds up identifying with her captors by the time it's over and saying that she had been, quote, privileged to take part in the experience. And just like Patty Hearst, winds up promoting their agenda and their message. It's like an earlier slide I showed you that says this is common of the experience. Contactees are programmed for a variety of future activities and a desire to share their messages. Anne ends this account by saying, those truths I had been taught through the years by my church, family, parents, and teachers no longer were valid to me as a result of her experiences with alien abduction and contact. She's not atypical in this either. After much study of the contactees and abductions, the expert opinion of Christian authors who have looked into this heavily, more so than I have even, on the contactee and abductee experience is that an examination of the evidence indicates that beyond any doubt, a primary agenda of the alien visitors is to change what human beings think about God and His Word, the Bible, and to replace exclusive Christianity with a religion of universalism. Other Christian authors examine the ET movement and they just write point blank, if the alleged messages that contactees are receiving are true, then the Bible is not true. God is not what or who we think He is. Christianity must be radically altered to fit the new paradigm. Don't be fooled. Experiences with these entities or a heavy belief in this phenomena is indeed going to require a choice on your part. Either the aliens are right and they're telling people the truth, which means that everything that the Christian church traditionally teaches about God and the Bible is a lie, or the Bible is right, God is true, and the aliens are lying. I've found that over the years the question of whether God could have created life on other planets, it's not the question that needs to be asked right now. The real question is, are the entities that people are reporting communication with and torment at the hands in this modern era, are they authentic extraterrestrials or not? But there's absolutely, I'm just finished by telling you, there's no two ways about it. Allegiance to these entities will cost you your relationship with the real Jesus Christ and the God of the Bible, or vice versa. You will have to make a choice. Being from Roswell, people do often ask me about my other views. Well, what do you think of the 1947 Roswell crash? That's not my topic tonight, but I will say I don't buy the alien crash theory, but I don't buy the weather balloon theory either. If you simply Google Roswell UFO crash, I'm honored to say my writing has been the #1 match for years now. The question I'm going to leave you with is what I want you to ponder, whether these are honest extraterrestrial life forms that have saturated Hollywood and the media in some of our lives or not. Is it possible that they're not only evangelizing us to an alternate spirituality, but are they themselves spiritual beings? The Bible teaches that our true struggle in this life and in this age is not against flesh and blood, human or alien, I'd argue, and that Jesus Christ gives His followers power and authority over wicked spiritual entities. What that means, and many here can testify, I'm sure, if a fallen angel or devil of some kind attacks you, if you're a born-again Christian empowered by the Spirit of God, then you have the authority in you to command that evil spiritual entity to leave. And again, I don't know who's a visitor here and who's not, but I know good and well in an AG church, I don't have to teach that as if it's new material to you. And I can't think of a better way to introduce Joe than with the final quote from Betty Andreasen's own encounters in her own words. Outside the changing room, the entities awaited Betty. She became fearful and prayed frantically for help. Ah, she thought to herself, what is all this about? What are they going to do to me? Oh, Jesus, be with me. When I said that, the leader glanced at me quickly, sort of surprised or stunned. I guess he was reading my thoughts, but he seemed to move a little slower. He was wondering what all this was about because he said, "You'll be all right. Follow us, please." Getting back at me again. I'm just going to pose the question. If what people are dealing with in these encounters are authentic extraterrestrial life forms with superior technology, why would her almost absent-minded expression of the name of Jesus cause the entities to, quote, be surprised or stunned? This begins to lend itself to a spiritual explanation of the phenomena. I'd say, why else would they suddenly, quote, move a little slower? Because the most common accounts of alien abduction involve people who, by all counts, they're taken against their will. They can't move. They can't even scream often. They can't get away no matter how hard they try, right? You're familiar with it by now. Why would such allegedly superior entities, in the transcribed accounts of one of the most famous abductees in history, as soon as she said Jesus, why would they now have to plead with her and say, please, follow us? Please welcome up my friend Joe Jordan.
Hearing some interesting things, a little different than what you've heard on TV and the movies. Question bears here.
A lot of the people that have seen my videos know my testimony of how it all started with one book. On a vacation trip to visit my brother, I picked up one book, UFO Crash at Roswell, and it was like opening a doorway into something that would totally change my life. And it has, and it's changed a number of times since then, but that one started it. It put me on a quest to find out what this UFO phenomenon was about. And like I said, I came into it as an agnostic with an open mind and what I thought was total objectivity, and became a MUFON investigator. Was doing UFO investigations, sighting investigations for a few years, and then got caught up in what is called the New Age belief system and metaphysical studies, because, you know, it's part of this UFO phenomenon. It goes hand in hand. I was caught up in all of that too, and it changed my worldview again, from being, you know, an agnostic humanist to one who was into the New Age and actually practicing these metaphysical studies myself. And I was able to see the UFO phenomenon through another set of eyes. And then in 1996, I was shown the true gospel, where it actually caught my attention, and I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior in November of 1996. And now I was able to look at this phenomenon in yet another set of eyes. So initially, was this what I was looking for? No, it was not. Well, the first case I came across, I actually had interviewed this gentleman who claimed to have had an abduction experience, along with other sighting experiences and other what he felt were abduction experiences too. But we decided to interview him, and this was 6 months before I became a Christian. This was in the middle of 1996 that we did the interview with him. And he used to come to my monthly meetings, my MUFON meetings that I had, and he just wanted to share what he had been through, you know, and he had an interest because of his experiences in the UFO phenomenon. And myself and one of my lead investigators, actually my partner that helped me found CE4 in the very beginning, his name was Wes Clark. He was a very good investigator, worked for the Space Center at the time as a quality inspector. And he had a good organizational skill of helping do these investigations. And him and I interviewed this gentleman in his home for 2 hours on videotape, and just let him talk. And we asked some questions and would guide him along just to try to get all of his information. Well, we put it away, and we didn't see anything unusual at the time. And that was interesting in itself, that we didn't catch this. But when I became a believer in November of 96, I was ready to put all of this away, because God showed me what this UFO experience was about, that there was a evil demonic side to it. And I felt that as a new Christian and wanting to do the things that God asked of me, that we shouldn't be involved in this, and I'd put it away. And God says, no, I got plans for you, and you need to take this message back to, you know, where you came from. And I said, You know, I can't take the Word of God back to these New Age people. I said, they don't believe it to be the inerrant Word of God. As a matter of fact, they don't even believe in God being a personal, you know, being, an entity that they can relate to. So I said, you got to give me something better. And nobody told me that as a new Christian you don't talk to God like that. But I did, not knowing any better. And he answered, and he says, guess what? You already have it. You just haven't seen it. And I couldn't understand what that meant at first. So I asked my partner, Wes, who was a Christian at the time, and I said, we've got something here somewhere that we need to go back and look at. We went back and looked at some of the cases that we had, and we pulled this particular one back out. It was a gentleman named Bill D. We pulled his video back out, plugged it into the VCR, and sat back and started watching and went, oh my. Do you remember hearing this? And Wes says, I don't. And we were sitting right there watching the gentleman and listening to him. But yet we were blinded and deafened at the time we did the recording. Nothing registered until this time when God said, go back and look, you already have it. And what he shared was an experience, atypical, abduction type experience, where he had been taken, experienced being taken, and immediately panicked and in fear. And he himself, actually just being a brand new Christian, called out during this panic experience in saying, Jesus, Jesus, help me. And when he did that, in an instant, the experience abruptly stopped. And he felt like he was thrown back into his bed. He even startled his wife. She asked him why he was jumping on the bed. And he said, you know, when he shared that experience, he didn't understand what it meant. And when we heard that, we knew we had something. Because never before, in all the studies we had done of the other work that the top researchers had done in the country, you know, this was 15 years ago, the big names, never before had anybody said that an experience could be stopped. As a matter of fact, they all said that it wasn't possible to stop an experience. Okay? But yet we had a gentleman that said he did, and in a particular way. So I contacted these top researchers around the country, got their home phones, called them up. They're nice guys. They can talk. You can talk to them just like me and you were talking. Most of them are very nice gentlemen. And I've met them at the conferences over the years. And I said, guys, I've got a very unusual case here. I'd like to run it by you and see what you think. And after I shared the story, they all asked, can we go off the record? And I said, well, that's fine. I said, I'm just trying to get answers here. Well, when I say go off the record, that means I can't tell you who said what, but I can tell you what they said. Well, these guys, they said that, yes, we had come across similar cases where people had cried out in the name of Jesus, or had quoted scripture, or had sung a Christian hymn, and the experience stopped. And I said, really? And I said, first off, I've never read anywhere where you guys have said that an experience can even be stopped. And then second, I've never read where you've stated where they could be stopped in any type of manner like this. And I said, why is that? And one of two answers, or both answers, would come out from each of these researchers. The first one was pretty common amongst them, was we didn't know what to make of it. But you know what? I would have been fine with that, because to me, that was an honest answer. I mean, I didn't know what to make of it either in the beginning. So I could relate to them on that answer, but they always would follow it with a second answer. And it was, we were afraid to go there, meaning the spiritual side of this, because it might affect our credibility in the UFO realm. So what I was seeing is they had research, evidence, part of the UFO puzzle that we've all been trying to put together. But they chose not to share it because of it affecting their credibility. Not that it was getting to the truth or it was completing an entire puzzle, but because of personal issues, personal agendas. And you know what that's called? It's called a cover-up. Throughout the UFO community, you hear government cover-up this, government cover-up that. But I'm telling you from experience in dealing with this type of case that there's been a cover-up all along by the researchers in this UFO community phenomenon that are supposedly giving us the truth and the answers to this experience. It's coming from them because they've got personal agendas. They only want to share certain things. You know, and if you ever follow these conferences that are going on out there, it's like they never give you the whole thing. You know, you get little bits and pieces. And I guess it's part of keeping you busy coming to their conferences. You know, but I've been sharing the same message for years now, the same evidence, and it still disturbs them.
There are several testimonies on ce4research.com, and I encourage anyone who has either been affected by the phenomenon or knows someone who has to take a look at this research. It is much too important not to. In an article on hearkenthewatchman.com entitled Demons or Extraterrestrials Tremble at the Name of Jesus Christ, Dr. Stephen Yulish comes to the same conclusion, stating, quote, I believe in UFOs and extraterrestrials. I do not believe that either I am delusional or am I hallucinating. I do believe that the government is covering up these phenomena even though they are being bewitched as to its real meaning. This deception is part of the spiritual war between God and Satan. These are therefore serious topics, end quote.
You're doing all this crypto work, you're looking at images, photographs, video. It's 1958, maybe the fall of 58. What happened after this?
At that time, the Project Blue Book thing kind of went pot, you know. If you remember, back in those days, they kind of declared it as a nothing, you know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
they were telling the world all UFOs are misidentifications, hoaxes,
yeah, balloons,
psychological issues, whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my boss came to me and he says, we've both got a new assignment. And he says, oh, I said, where are we going? Oh, he says, we're going to the Capitol. We're going to be part of the Eisenhower push. He's trying to find out something about, all about these aliens that MJ-12 was supposed to find out, but never sent back reports to him.
The MJ-12, the UFO control group, were they calling it MJ-12 at that time? Yes.
They called us in, went into the Oval Office, and President Eisenhower was there and Nixon, and they said, we called the people in from MJ-12 from Area 51 and S4, but they told us that the government had no jurisdiction over what they were doing. So being a general, past general, you didn't tell him to go to hell without any real good reason, you know. Mm-hmm. So he said, I want you and your boss to fly out there. I want you to give him a personal message. And he says, I want you to tell them, whoever is in charge, tell them that to get in, they have this week, coming week, to get into Washington and to report to me. And if they don't, I'm going to get the First Army from Colorado, and we're going to go over, we're going to take the base over. I don't care what kind of classified material you got. We're going to rip this thing apart.
Eisenhower was going to invade
Area 51. Yeah, with the First Army.
So you go out with your superior.
Yes.
You fly out you land, what happens? Can you describe this whole process, what you saw?
It took us the 13 or 15 miles south to S4 and like different garage door openings. Okay. And in these garage door openings, they had like different saucer crafts. The very first one had the Roswell craft in. It was kind of crashed up, but apparently every alien that was in it died except for a couple.
So you see the Roswell craft, and what are some of the others that you see?
Well, the Roswell craft was really strange because it looked like real heavy aluminum foil. We could rock next to it, and you could rock it. The whole thing probably weighed 150, 300 pounds.
Could they tell what the source of power was of this craft?
Yeah, it was like a reverse gravitational thing of some kind. In fact, one later on, I got the mathematical code for reversing gravity in a 3x5 card. I guess there are different types of grays and so on.
How did you see that evidence?
Well, at the later on at S4, we viewed the autopsy film, and then the colonel said, "What we've got in here is we're interviewing a gray alien."
All right, right there. How did you feel at that moment?
Well, I thought, boy, we had no idea we were going to see the real thing. All we saw was film.
Although as Minister of National Defense, I had sighting reports of UFOs. I was too busy to be concerned about them at the time because I was trying to unify the Army, Navy, and Air Force into a single Canadian Defense Force. And that itself was a kind of battle to the finish. So this was not high on my agenda. But about 10 years ago, I started getting interested due to a young man from Ottawa sending me material on the subject. I told him I was too busy to read it, but he had confidence that someday I would. It took me a while to get around to reading it, but I took it for my summer reading in 2005 and was really impressed with what was contained in it. And what I thought to myself is there are huge issues here, huge issues. And the American people and the people of the world have a right to know what's going on because they're part of it. It's not just an isolated thing. I accept the invitation of Victor Vigiani, who's over here somewhere, and his cohort, Mike Bird, to speak to a symposium at the University of Toronto. And I said, UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying overhead. That gave me the dubious distinction of being the first person of cabinet rank in the G8 group of countries to say so unequivocally.
Now, another thing I want to reach to you is that during the unbelievable part, I was involved in building another base inside of Dulce, New Mexico, which is Los Alamos Laboratory. It's a biological laboratory. On the southwest part of the Archuleta Mesa, we built an underground facility, a better part of 3 cubic miles hollowed out underground. Then to the southwest of that, we built we were in the process of the early stages of building. We drilled 4 large tunnel-like holes. Some of them ran 2.5 miles under the surface. Number of the original wells or drilling machines that were used were at the rate of up 2 miles a day. It was fairly rapid. The equipment kept coming up broken. So we wanted to go down, we wanted to send somebody down there, a human observer, or human observers in this case, to find out what was going on. Well, to our total surprise, first of all, the government knew all about it. They didn't tell anybody. When I saw Green Beret and Black Beret people encamped inside of our geologist camp, I knew something was up, the gig was up. First of all, I knew all about the alien agenda. I'll explain that in a few minutes. The large alien grays had been encamped there for as best as believed possible about 400 or 500 years. It had been one of their internal bases. And we drilled holes right on top of it. All the stinking air, all the black sooty air came right out as soon as the first hole was sunk, and all this soot came up, and well, that's when all the hell broke loose, really, all it started. Anyway, after we drilled all 4 holes, it took about 2 days to drill all 4 of them. And when you build an underground base, you drill 4 basic holes, and you build called stopes or cross-member holes across, and you use blasting equipment, special blasting equipment by the analyzation of the rock formation, and you literally blast out or tunnel out or deflagrate or melt rock out to build the large rooms that are required for this underground base. Well, in this process, I was lowered down the basket of one of these holes, and about from me to this elderly woman here in the front was sitting a 7-foot-tall alien gray. The stench was worse than the worst garbage can you can imagine. The person was or the entity was absolutely horrible. I didn't waste any time. I reached for my pistol. At that time, I was an engineer. I didn't have time to carry all the folderol of one of these big submachine guns that all the sea spray and the yellow fruit and all the outer perimeter and inner perimeter security people carried. I carried a little Walter PPK pistol with a 9-shot clip. This was in late August of 1979. Now, you got a regular suit of clothes, you got a regular clothes on, plus you're in almost like a spacesuit environment, and you're reaching for a gun. It's not the easiest thing to do, and then to pop a clip in it and start shooting. And I killed 2 of them. Yes, they're mortal, and they do die. However, in the process, one of them did this. All I remember is that he just kind of waved his hand in front of his chest, and the next thing I know, this blue beam hit me and just literally opened me up like a fish, and burnt my fingers right off of me. And it was some form of electrical force, because the kind of like being hit by a lightning bolt burned all my toenails off of me. Completely crispy crittered my left foot, burnt the shoe right off of me. All I remember is the smoking remains, and I'm still conscious, but in and out of, I didn't remember much. And there was a Green Beret that was right behind me that risked his life. In fact, he died. But he risked his life. He shoved me back in the basket and hit the button and took me up. And I wouldn't be alive talking to you today if it wasn't for him. I'm forever indebted. He lost his life.
Ему несут многочисленные папки с надписью «Совершенно секретно». И вот там все тайны мира. И что вы знаете абсолютно все. Ну вот, например, прилетали на Землю инопланетяне. Вот самые зеленые человечки.
Значит, рассказываю вам первый и последний раз. Вместе с передачей чемодана с ядерными кодами президенту страны приносят специальную папку. На ней написано «Совершенно секретно». И она целиком и полностью посвящена пришельцам, которые посетили нашу планету. Одновременно предоставляется доклад от абсолютно закрытой спецслужбы, которая занимается контролем пришельцев на территории нашей страны. Значит, две эти папки передаются вместе с ядерным чемоданом. После прекращения полномочий, соответственно, эти папки передаются новому президенту. Более подробную информацию на эту тему вы можете получить, посмотрев известный хроникально-документальный фильм «Люди в черном». Вышло несколько версий.
Сколько их среди нас?
Сколько их среди нас, рассказывать не буду, потому что это может вызвать панику.
We are, of course, the Pleiadians, and as we've said, it is our pleasure to be here at this time to communicate with you, to give you an opportunity to understand our energy and who we are. This one that speaks through us, we call her our vehicle. She has given you an opportunity to listen to her interpretation of what she feels is taking place as a result of our contact with her.
Not even a speck of a speck. Yet humans live their lives as though they are as big as gods.
Allow us to communicate an idea to you, once again, that we would like to call the span. This involves the idea of a span of time and timing that is now upcoming on your planet.
Although many direct experiences with these entities do seem to entail dread and negativity, there are plenty of accounts of positive experiences. Most of these experiences are found within the New Age movement, where the experiences are not direct physical contact, but rather spiritual through a process called channeling. This is where the person willingly invites entities who are referred to as the higher self, ascended masters, higher spiritual beings, extraterrestrial entities who are communicating telepathically, entities of higher densities, and a number of other alleged beings who are more evolved than human beings. Most of the quotes we've looked at in an earlier section of the ancient mystery schools and theosophy were all channeled information. In the case of Helena Blavatsky, the entity she channeled was named Kuthumi and El Mura, both of whom were considered ascended masters from northern India and Tibet. Alice Bailey channeled the entity Dejwal Kul, also considered an ascended master. Today there are several New Age teachers who claim to get their information from a source of a higher spiritual origin. David Icke claims he channeled entities he refers to as the guides.
And one great example of the way this works I came across, which the beings, which we call the guys, told us about.
You call them the guys?
The guys, yeah. It's not
like the beings like
Tarot, Rakorsky, and yeah, that's right.
Right.
Now
he was Jesus' father, Rakorsky.
That's right.
And Merlin as well.
Part of him was, yeah. That's right. The aspects.
David Wilcock claims he channeled an entity named Ra.
I am Ra. It is an honor and a privilege to greet you this day in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Resonant raindrops of liquid light cascading down in a panoply of shapes and colors, unbeknownst to the conscious mind.
More and more people are beginning to claim that they are channeling Jesus Christ as well.
Certain aspects of Christianity and that organized religion that really belabors, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but the suffering that Jesus may or may not have experienced while he was on the cross. And in meditation about 2 years ago, he actually came to me in meditation. I wasn't asking for him to come forward, but it was a very, very powerful experience where he actually allowed me to feel what it was like on the cross. I was looking down and could see the pin in my feet as they were crossed, and it was so emotional, but I felt and experienced no pain. There was pain associated with it.
This is very similar to mediumship and psychics who claim to be able to contact the dead through telepathic means. It is quite clear that the Bible explicitly prohibits the practice of divination, mediumship, and other spiritual practices which allow one to have direct contact with entities from another realm. In Deuteronomy 18:10-11, it states, quote, "Let no one be found among you who sacrifices his son or daughter in the fire, who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft or casts spells, or who is a medium or spiritist, or who consults the dead." End quote. But why is this so? Plenty of people who channel or have what are called gifts are happy with their ability to do so and would even go as far as to say that God gave them this ability for a greater purpose to help the world. It is my firm belief that God can take any situation and turn it into good. However, like most things in the Bible that God tells us not to do, He is only doing so to keep us from harm. The problem with channeling is that there is no way to know whether these entities which are being contacted are from God, as some suggest, or are counterfeits, in other words, demons working for Satan. It states in 2 Corinthians 11:14-15, quote, "And no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. It is not surprising then if his servants masquerade as servants of righteousness. Their end will be what their actions deserve." End quote. Then in 1 John 4:1-3, it states, quote, "Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. This is how you can recognize the Spirit of God. Every spirit that acknowledges that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God, but every spirit that does not acknowledge Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard is coming and even now is already in the world." End quote. God is not in it to try to take away abilities or keep us from enjoying the likes of astral projection, outer body experiences, remote viewing, and other such alleged abilities that are so common and popular in the New Age just because He is cruel and acting as a cosmic police officer. Rather, He is simply giving us warnings and informing us to test the spirits so that we can be sure it is from God to protect us from deceiving spirits who are in it to draw our attention away from God and away from Jesus and ultimately away from the true message of salvation. How many of these folks who channel entities actually exercise this basic principle? And for those who claim they are channeling Jesus Christ, well, I suppose it's possible, but in my opinion, not very likely. Why would Jesus go directly against His own teachings to send a message to someone? The bottom line is that we ourselves can have a direct relationship with Jesus, not through channeling, but through a life of prayer. Prayer is not channeling. The key difference is that with prayer, we ourselves are humble, coming before God, speaking to Him directly as ourselves. With channeling, one's own body and mind are taken over, where the entity enters the physical body to deliver a message. Again, this is very similar to a demonic possession. Demons do not have bodies. In fact, they seek to enter objects or the physical body as hosts. This is seen all over the Bible. On several accounts, the Bible speaks of demon-possessed people. In Mark chapter 5, a demon-possessed man replies to Jesus when asked what their name is, stating, quote, "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." End quote. In Luke 4:35, we see Jesus casting out demons, where it states, quote, "Be quiet," Jesus said sternly, "come out of him." Then the demon threw the man down before them all and came out without injuring him. End quote. Later we see disciples of Jesus casting out demons in His name. Quote, "The 72 returned with joy and said, 'Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name.'" End quote. And in Luke 11:14, Jesus drives out another demon, stating, quote, "Jesus was driving out a demon that was mute. When the demon left, the man who had been mute spoke, and the crowd was amazed." End quote. The dangers of channeling are that you are allowing deceiving spirits enter into your body. It is dangerous not only for your own soul, but for others around you, such as friends and family. The danger is that it can lead to demonic possession and strongholds. Are the entities and alien abductions, spiritual beings and channeling and meditation, and straight-up evil demons one and the same? I would say yes. As we just saw, it's not hard to convince anyone that these demonic spirits are evil and are of the Antichrist. However, the other spirits that appear as angels of light may be more difficult to discern, especially the alleged ETs that seem to have a positive message to mankind. But let's look at the specific messages people received from alleged aliens and higher spiritual entities. David Wilcock supposedly channeled an entity named Ra. In his New Age ministry, he points to a book called The Law of One as an authoritative document which he claims is much more in tune with the truth than the Bible. The same entity, Ra, which Wilcock claims he channeled, was channeled through Carla Rueckert in the early 1980s and was documented in The Law of One. Let's look at what The Law of One has to say about Jesus Christ, the Bible, and Christianity. Upon asking who or what Jesus Christ is, Ra explained, quote, "I am Ra, the one known to you as Jesus of Nazareth did not have a name. This entity was a member of fifth density of the highest level of the sub-octave. The particular mind-body-spirit complex you call Jesus is, as what you would call an entity, not to return except as a member of the Confederation speaking through a channel. However, there are others of the identical congruency of consciousness that will welcome those to the fourth density. This is the meaning of the returning. The entity was absolved karmically of the destruction of an other self when it was in the last portion of lifetime and spoke upon what you would call a cross, saying, 'Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.' In forgiveness lies the stoppage of the wheel of action, or what you call karma." End quote. So if we are to test the spirit in accordance to what we are told in 1 John, it confirms that Ra felt that Jesus was not God in the flesh, but simply another entity of higher spiritual levels, just like Ra and other ascended masters who chose to become part of the human race. This is a clever twisting and a deceptive way to deny Jesus' deity. Another interesting thing I noticed in the channeled writings of Ra was that not only did this supposed entity rarely use the name of Jesus in response to the questions about Jesus, but every time it did, it always referenced him by starting off with "the one you call," or "the one it calls," or "as you call this entity now." In other words, never was this entity able to directly say Jesus Christ. It always had to set it up so as to defer his deity. Ra goes on to explain his opinion of Christianity when he states, quote, "Another example well known in your culture is the visualization in your mass of the distortion of the love of the one infinite creator called Christianity, wherein a small portion of your foodstuffs is seen to be a mentally configured but entirely real man, the man known to you as Jehoshua, or as you call this entity now, Jesus." End quote. Once again, it claims the falseness of Christianity, calling it a distortion of the love of the one infinite creator. This again demonstrates the denial of uniqueness of Jesus Christ as the one and only savior for mankind, fully God, fully human. The Star Doves, another group who claims to have channeled spiritual entities named masters or gods, describes Jesus in yet another form. They state, quote, "Perhaps it may be new to some souls to learn that Maitreya overshadowed Jesus the Christ in his lifetime. Yet there is another great soul who is of prime importance in this plan the masters know and serve. That being is Sananda, our star commander-in-chief." End quote. This is alarming because Maitreya is the New Age and Theosophists' Christ. Many members of the United Nations and other world leaders are also earnestly seeking the arrival of this supposed world teacher who allegedly is going to be a spiritual leader to help humanity usher in the New Age. For more details on Maitreya, I encourage you to check out Aquarius, The Age of Evil by Keith Thompson. Furthermore, in an alleged channeling of this entity known to the Star Doves as Jesus Sananda, apparently described his second coming by stating, quote, "I speak in the name of Jesus, Lord of this world and of all which concerns this earth sphere. I am he who is known as the Christ, and through this channel announce my coming unto earth once more. I am Sananda of the hierarchical board, known on earth through my last incarnation frequency as Jesus the Christ, Lord of this world and of the planet known as Earth." End quote. What's interesting is that Jesus never claimed to be the Lord of this world. This is verified in John 18:36, where Jesus states, quote, "My kingdom is not of this world." End quote. The Bible is also clear that Satan is actually the ruler of this world. This is shown in many ways in the Bible, one of which is found in Matthew 4:8, where it states, quote, "Again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. And he said to him, All these I will give to you, if you will fall down and worship me." End quote. The Star Doves also claim to actually have an encounter with Sananda/Jesus, Quote, "On August 14th, 1997, I was taken up in my light body by Sananda/Jesus to the mothership Sangre de Cristo, his Starfleet headquarters for the second coming plan the Masters know and serve." End quote. All of these claims, again, go against the standards set by 1 John. The claim that Jesus was not God in the flesh and that he was somehow communicating with these people without their testing of these spirits. It should be obvious that this claim of Jesus is also different from the claims made by Ra in the Law of One channelings, confirming further that these are nothing more than deceiving spirits. In a very popular book entitled A Course in Miracles, penned by Helen Schuckman, said she channeled what she called an inner voice, which claims was Jesus. But after studying the material and the metaphysical nature of the message, it is quite clear that this could not have been Jesus Christ as we know through the biblical accounts. Here are just a few quotes from A Course in Miracles that show its true nature. On page 9, it states, quote, "There is no sin." On page 10, it states, quote, "A slain Christ has no meaning." On page 12, it states, quote, "Do not make the pathetic error of clinging to the old rugged cross." And on page 13, it states, quote, "The name of Jesus as such is but a symbol. It is a symbol that is safely used as a replacement for the many names of all the gods to which you pray." As if the denial of sin, Jesus, and the cross was not enough, A Course in Miracles goes on to claim that there is no devil either, stating, quote, "You have created in your mythology the being you call devil. You have even imagined a god at war with this being. Of course, a real devil does not exist. Using psychic ability is nothing more than using your sixth sense, not trafficking with the devil. There is no devil, each to his own without judgment." End quote. In an article posted on mountainstreampress.org, Warren B. Smith came to the same conclusion that the Jesus being promoted by A Course in Miracles was in fact the spirit of the Antichrist and not the true Jesus Christ. He stated, quote, "My conclusions were inescapable and shocking. A Course in Miracles and the Bible were two completely different thought systems that were mutually exclusive and diametrically opposed in every degree. To my utter amazement, A Course in Miracles was the Holy Bible turned upside down. The Course had not updated or reinterpreted the Bible. It had completely rewritten it." End quote. In another book written by Levi H. Dowling called The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, the claims are similar in the denial of Jesus' deity by stating that we are all becoming Christs. Levi claims he was able to access the Akashic Records, which is allegedly an ethereal network of intelligence that surrounds the atmosphere of the earth and can be accessed through the spirit or our light body. This is the same place Edgar Cayce claims he received all of his information from as well. In this account, Jesus is not so much denied, but again, painted as a mystical master who had special abilities who simply came to show mankind how to live and become Christs ourselves. Here's a list of claims made by the book as summarized on Wikipedia. Number 1. Jesus puts on the role of the Christ but is not automatically Christ by nature. By making himself through effort and prayer a fit vessel, Jesus enabled the Christ to dwell within him. Christ is therefore used as a term for a perfect human being that Jesus exemplified, a human being that has been christened, anointed, and therefore made holy. 2. Reincarnation exists and is the explanation for various seeming injustices. Reincarnation allows people to settle debts they have incurred in past lives. Number 3. Humanity has forgotten God and is currently working its way back to fully remembering God. Number 4. Time is separated into ages. These ages last approximately 2,000 years. We are now nearing the start of the Aquarian Age. Number 5. All souls will eventually mature and become perfect, like Jesus, thus ending the cycle of reincarnation. Number 6. No soul is ever abandoned by God. There are again several problems with this theology, because they contradict biblical principles and teachings, and no wonder, since once again, these are not revelations given to people from God directly, but are deceiving spirits and false prophets who twist, confuse, and distort the true gospel message. So as you can see, no matter if it's aliens, ascended masters, spiritual gods, or anything else, the consistent message is that of the denial of Jesus Christ as God. There are literally thousands of channel documents and books from people such as Edgar Cayce, Aleister Crowley, even Napoleon Hill in his famous work Think and Grow Rich. If they were aliens from a faraway galaxy, why not help us with our problems to cure cancer or teach us some form of technology that would help humanity? Why are they directly teaching that Jesus was not God, but just another master or teacher?